Main event time, we are going up to the lightweight division and to one of the most eagerly anticipated title fights of the year. It's Charles Oliveira, our reigning champion, who is taking on the former interim champion Justin Gaethje. Bookmakers for this one have Oliveira at -165. You can get Gaethje at +145. And I'll start off this discussion by asking you a question, John. Did Charles Oliveira's win over Dustin Poirier at UFC 269 finally legitimize him as a champion?
My answer is definitely yes, he did.
Because I just want to make a point here, and I've got to hold my hands up and apologize because I was one of those people. There were many out there when Charles Oliveira won the title, beat Michael Chandler at 262, who sort of saw him as a bit of a placeholder champion. Not because they thought he was bad or he had a weak skill set, but because his road to the title, bearing in mind that Khabib had just retired, Michael Chandler was a bit of an unknown when it came to the UFC, he sort of like, dare I say, sort of looked his way into the belt without fighting the elites, without fighting the Dustin Poiriers or the Justin Gaethjes of the world. And seeing him beat Dustin Poirier, who a lot of people had already ordained as the future lightweight champion, it made a lot of people realize and say, hey, this guy is incredibly talented and more than worthy of holding that belt.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I was in that same category. I mean, no shame to admit it. What I will say though is, everyone knows that the Connor versus Poirier 2, the one that took place at 257, that was for the real lightweight championship. Khabib had already retired. The UFC was stuck up on him coming back, even though he never was going to come back, and that should have been for the lightweight championship. So essentially, Poirier won the championship in that fight. Oliveira beat Chandler for the interim, and then they fought for the interim versus the real champ, and Charles solidified himself as the undisputed. So, I mean, he needed that win big time to solidify himself, and he did. I mean, he fought through adversity really well, and I mean, it was a great comeback win from him. So, I'll give him some credit for that. But part of me also does feel like Poirier kind of let that fight slip through his fingers in a sense. Round one, Poirier was outstriking Oliveira. He was able to stuff his takedowns. He hurt him a few times, maybe even a brief kind of knockdown type of thing. And in round two, Oliveira got a brief takedown. He was on the back of Poirier, and then he fell off. And then instead of disengaging, getting away from the grappling, Poirier tried to land some ground and pound. He got tangled up. He got swept. He ended up on bottom, and then the fight completely changed there. But if Poirier just stepped back and just didn't engage in the ground there, it could have been a whole different fight. It could have been a Poirier round two knockout. So, I mean, Oliveira did a great job at capitalizing on the mistake of Poirier, but I also don't think, I mean, it was a far, far from flawless performance from Oliveira. Very, he went through a lot of adversity to get that win. So, you can still take away a lot of negatives from Charles in that fight.
Do you think there's anything to the accusations that Oliveira grabbed Dustin's glove?
When I was watching live, I was like, he grabbed the fucking glove. He grabbed, but then I rewatched it, and it looks like instead of like digging his fingers inside the glove, it was like around the wrist. So I think it was clean. It was just a something that looked bad on camera, but I think it was clean.
You touched on something which I think's been a big sort of narrative of the Charles Oliveira Renaissance, which is there was once upon a time where Charles Oliveira was defined by the way that he was sort of collapsed when he faced any kind of adversity. Like we saw that when he fought against Paul Felder 2018, which was his last loss. And yet these past two matches, we've seen him dragged into very deep waters and come out the other side. Like Michael Chandler put it on him very early in that fight. There was the guillotine attempt, and then he rocked him, and there was a bit of ground and pound, and then he came back second round knockout. And the same thing against Dustin Poirier. Dustin rocks him in like the first minute of that fight, and then he comes back to get the submission in the third. So those sort of issues when it comes to composure that Charles Oliveira maybe had early in his career, those appear to be a thing of the past now.
Yeah, I think he's definitely overcome that. I mean, he's done a tremendous job. I think the real turning point was the David Tamer fight. I mean, Tamer put both of his fingers into Oliveira's eyes, and his eyes were like purple when he was trying to recover. And I was watching that fight. I was like, there's no way Oliveira is going to continue to fight. And if he does, he's not going to win. But he got right back to work and, finished that fight in the next round. So I think Oliveira has really, crushed that narrative about, kind of being a bit of a wilter or quitter at times. He really battles back from adversity well now.
I bet Paul Felder on commentary just loves the idea of the fact that he can just sit there and say, I was the last guy to beat the lightweight champion.
Yeah, I know. I definitely think so. I think that's part of like he seems like he has one foot out the door, like he kind of wants to come back, and I think that reason why he comes back is because he's like, I beat the champion, I knocked him out, viciously. I was the last guy to knock out the champion. What can I still do? But I don't know. Paul's a smart guy. He's got a big career ahead of him. I hope he maybe just steps away for good.
And he's been a fantastic broadcaster as well. Getting back on topic though, we're going to talk about Justin Gaethje here. 23-3 record. His only losses coming against Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, Khabib. So no shame in losing to any of those three. His most recent fight was against Michael Chandler, UFC 268, Fight of the Year contender. Based on what we saw in the Michael Chandler fight, does that make you more or less confident about his abilities going into this one against Charles?
I'm more confident, honestly. Because that fight, he absorbed some big shots. I mean, he's always been crazy durable. We know he's really durable. And I think people after the Khabib fight just thought he was like some terrible defensive grappler who just gets instantly taken down. And I think some people are still thinking that about Oliveiras. Oh, Khabib was able to take him down, slice through him, and submit him. Oliveira will do the same. But I mean, I can't stress enough how much better of a wrestler that Khabib is than Oliveira. First of all, and um, Khabib also has a different style of fighting where instead of striking with Gaethje, he kind of stays as far away from Gaethje as he can. He doesn't really want to engage in those striking battles, and then when he finds the time, he shoots that takedown from a far distance. He gets that takedown. He transitions. Oliveira is a lot more willing to engage in the striking. We saw that versus Chandler and Poirier. He struck with both of them, and then he tried to take them down. But as we saw in the Chandler versus Gaethje fight, is Gaethje's takedown defense is actually a lot better than people gave it credit for. We hadn't seen a lot of that takedown defense because he hasn't grappled much over his career, but when Chandler shot those takedowns, I mean, Gaethje stuffed them. His sprawl looked real good. He got those double underhooks and stuffed that double leg takedown. So I think Gaethje's takedown defense is a lot better than people thought it was after the Khabib fight.
And also as well, I think one of the sort of things that a lot of people are missing when it comes to this, the sort of painting this as quite a basic striker versus grappler battle when it's a lot more sophisticated than that. But I think what a lot of people are maybe missing about Charles Oliveira compared to Khabib is, as you mentioned before, a lot of Khabib's wrestling is based on double leg takedowns in open space. Whereas with Charles Oliveira, a lot of it is sort of like trips in the clinch and sort of like single legs, much more sort of a lot more jiu-jitsu based grappling rather than Khabib that was pure wrestling. And yet Gaethje is fantastic in the clinch. That was one of his trademarks when he was in the WSOF, just the way he would brutalize the body with like knees and body shots to just slowly wear down his opponent. So if Charles does try to maybe make this into a clinch battle, Gaethje's more than capable of holding his own.
Yeah, but the clinch is going to be really exciting in this fight because that's really where Oliveira does some of his best striking work. He gets that double collar tie, nasty knees, nasty elbows from the clinch, and then Gaethje is just really skilled at boxing from the clinch. When you separate from the clinch, he's really good at catching with punches as you exit. So I'm really interested to see how these clinch battles go. And I mean, I think the striking is going to pretty heavily favor Justin Gaethje, though. I mean, we still saw against Poirier that Oliveira's defensive boxing isn't the best. His chin still can be touched at times, and I think we're going to see Gaethje land some big shots here to the chin of Oliveira. And I don't see Oliveira being able to withstand them. I think that Gaethje is probably a harder puncher than Poirier and Chandler, even though we saw obviously Poirier knock out Gaethje back in the day. But one punch power, I think that Gaethje is a harder hitter, and I think that we're gonna see Gaethje land some hammers on Oliveira. We're gonna see Oliveira do that thing where he pulls guard, he takes a seat, and Gaethje just needs to disengage. I'm sure Trevor Whitman is nailing this into his head over the training camp, but he can't engage. He can't follow up with ground and pound. Just let him stand back up and drop him again. And I think that this new patient version of Gaethje, where he's really taking his time, is going to be able to find the right punches, and then he's going to be able to eventually find that kill shot at some point. And don't forget, May might be a bit of a mythical month for Gaethje here. Back in May of 2020 is when he was able to defeat Ferguson. For the interim title over 5 rounds, and it's almost 2 years to the day. So that May Justin Gaethje might be a little bit of a mythical fighter right here.
Is this a new
But oh
February?
shit,
Is this a
did,
new February
did
Derek Lewis?
oh that curse broke? Remember that curse broke. Um, yeah, that had Black History Month too. So there was a lot of things going well for Lewis there. But I think didn't Oliveira beat Chandler in May too though?
Yes,
So
he
that
did.
kind of throws
Yes.
my theory out. Yeah, that kind of throws my a wrench in my theory there. But I trust Justin's takedown defense enough to stuff some early shots. I think he's the faster starter. He's gonna hurt uh, Oliveira here early on, and I mean he was just in that high pace fight with Chandler too, and he was still stuffing shots and landing shots in round 3 there. So I feel like Gaethje can really fight at that crazy pace for 3 rounds, and I think he's perfectly suited for that. So I like Gaethje in this fight. I think both underdogs are winning. I think we're hearing and new twice.
And another big concern when it comes to Oliveira as well is he has a very, very high guard. So that's going to leave the body vulnerable. And we know what Justin Gaethje can do with his body shots and working the legs as well.
Yeah, something nasty leg kick, some of the best in the game, great body shots, and I feel like Oliveira is going to be in a world of trouble here on the feet, and Gaethje I think just has to stuff a few shots, and I think it's going to get a lot harder for Oliveira to do anything with that offense. So, um, a 10 out of 10 fight, A plus fight. You got the two best lightweights in the world right now going at it, and I mean, props to the UFC for making this fight. I mean, maybe we'll see Islam down the road get the next shot. Not really so much so looking forward to that. Oh, we got Benil Dariush in the mix too. So,
I was going to say he has to get through my boy Betty first.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think inevitably next year, this time, we're going to be talking about Islam Makhachev as the champion, which won't be too exciting to me, but inevitably, I think he will get that belt. But for now, I think Gaethje's getting the belt wrapped around his waist. So, what's your pick for the fight?
I think this is a very, very close fight. And I think the bookmakers have done a good job making it as close as they did. I think, like you mentioned before, I think striking advantage wise, this is there's no question. Gaethje is by a long way the better striker between the two. I just think there's so many more ways for Charles Oliveira to win this fight that I would give him the edge. I think that because as good as Justin Gaethje's takedown defense is, we did see how vulnerable he is when he is finally on his back. And I think all it needs is for one clean Charles Oliveira takedown, and he could very easily wrap him up. So I'm going to lean towards Charles Oliveira. I'm going to say 4th round RNC.
I'll go with the second round KO for Justin the Highlight Gaethje.